Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in this video I'm going to tell you how I learned Python within 2 weeks. This is not a clickbait, you might take a little bit longer or a little bit shorter, but I really got good in Python that I even got a job. So I'm going to be telling about my journey into Python programming language. I knew a little bit of other programming languages before, like HTML, CSS, and a little bit of C program. So first thing that most of the students often ask me is whether the Python is really difficult. How hard is it to learn Python? So Python is considered as one of the easiest programming languages to learn. While anyone can learn Python programming language, even if you have never written a single line of code in your life, you should expect that it takes time and you should expect moment of frustration. But in this video I'm going to tell you like some of the tips to get around this issue of frustration and getting stuck. So I'm going to tell some of the tips that I had in my mind to learn Python really quickly. This doesn't apply only to Python, this applies to anything that you want to do in your life. And these are definitely some of the tips that I wished I knew before I started learning Python. So the first tip that I want to give is about mindset. You should always have a reason to learn. You should always have an end goal. What I mean by this is when you don't have any reason to learn Python, you eventually will get frustrated, you eventually will start wasting your time and not making effective use of your time. The reason can be anything. The reason can be like getting a job or making a simple project, making a game, anything. The reason for me was to make a self-driving car. So even after I learned Python, I started learning machine learning. I started learning OpenCV, which is a great computer vision module. I learned NumPy, Pandas, a bunch of modules and things apart from just Python. This really helped me out to focus properly, especially at the beginning. Python was way too easy and I was getting a little bit out of focus, to be honest. I was not practicing everything. So this ensured that I was always learning more than what is required. So I used to learn 6 to 10 hours on average per day, and this was the reason why I was able to learn and code for a lot of time in a day. Some might not need the end goal or a reason because they just love studying and they are nerds, but that was not the reason for me. That was not something that I can do, and I usually never feel like studying something or learning about something without a reason. So the second tip that I had in mind was learning from different sources. So Python can be easily learned from so many instructors, so many free videos online. Whatever you learn from a bootcamp, let's say you complete a full Python bootcamp, course in Udemy or Coursera, that is not the end of Python. What you have learned is maybe 1% of the entire Python. Python is too vast to be learned from one source or just one course. And to be honest, no one can really learn 100% of any programming language. Sometimes the syntax and the style, how someone programs, even the how someone solves a program can be very different from one another. So learning some program like Space Invader game from Tech with Tim and also from another video or another course is going to give you a good understanding of how you can solve the problem by yourself. So in order to really understand open source programs, you have to really learn from different sources and different instructors, different mentors, different videos. Otherwise you can't really understand the open source code that is out there in the GitHub. The third tip that I want to give you is actually about how you should learn Python. You have to really learn by doing or making projects, creating, submitting your assignments, and not by watching videos and understanding the concepts and syntax. Programming is a skill and you cannot really learn the skill by watching a video. Just because you have completed 100 hours worth of Python material doesn't mean that you have mastered Python. I see so many marketing campaigns like master Python in a week. Those are really fake, to be honest. To be really like a master in Python, you should be able to code any problem by yourself without any help. Even I am not a master in Python. If there is difficult problems that I have to solve, I will ask for help. So understand that if you learn 100 hours of content doesn't mean that you master the Python, even if the course says so. You have to involve yourself to code on your own. By making projects, you develop excellent debugging skills, and that makes you a good programmer. I can give you an example for this. Just because you watch a lot of soccer doesn't mean that you can really play soccer. If you have never touched the ball, if you have never kicked a ball before, it's basically not going to work. The sportsmen train for their lifetime to achieve medals and to be world class. But Python doesn't take a lot of time. You don't need an entire lifetime to master Python. So start learning now by making projects, by building things, by tinkering with the code available to you, by learning from different sources, and you are on your way to success. Yeah, to be honest, you don't even need to code something big. Code something small that is helpful, right? For example, if you have a problem, you want to make a program for sending good morning and good night to your girlfriend or maybe your parents every day, that is an amazing project. Even if it is simple thing, you're solving a big issue in your life. So code on the basis of application and not on the basis of number of lines. So the fourth tip that I had in mind is something that even a lot of YouTubers and a lot of articles cover. Even I do cover this point in my other channel, but this is very important. Learn the fundamentals first. So being very strong with the fundamentals is very important because it teaches you the foundation and structure of Python. It might be boring to learn loops and statements, but these are very powerful building blocks that is used by every program out there. Any even big program, small program, doesn't matter. These are the most fundamental blocks. So don't skip it. Try to give attention to basics and fundamentals of programming languages. Basics of Python is like alphabets. So print statements and these things are like alphabets. Only when you know alphabets, then you can go for some advanced topics like loops and if statements inside loops, nested loops, etc. So they are like words, to be honest. And only when you know words, you can create sentences. So sentences are practical projects that is not too big. That is maybe one Python file, 100 lines or 200 lines of code. And once you achieve that, then you can start writing articles in Python. So articles are like multiple files, different pages, creating a website or creating a machine learning program that solves a problem. Okay, so I had the mindset right, and then now I'm going to tell you the process of how I learned Python very quickly. So the first thing that I started to do is I searched for courses online, and I started watching some YouTube videos. Then I saved everything that would be helpful for me in my learning journey, and then after 1 or 2 days of searching and gathering resources, I eventually also paid for one of the course in Udemy. It was great. There are several free online resources like Code Academy, pythontutors.com, etc. But I didn't really like the idea of coding in a browser, so I bought this course in Udemy and I had a few more projects in YouTube. I completed this Udemy course like within a week and or a week and a half. It was not very involving. There are definitely some assignments and a lot of projects. There is a lot of places where you will get stuck, but it wasn't something that makes you create real world projects. But it gives a very good foundation. It was filled with all the basic things you need. It was very, very useful for me. I used to learn everything 3 times. So the first time I just used to watch a video. The second time I write everything down in a piece of notebook like this. I just write everything in this notebook about machine learning. Similarly, I have another notebook for Python. And after I write everything down in all the important syntax and notes in my notebook, then I try the exact same code without watching the video or without referring the code, but by referring only the notes that I have, like the short version of that lecture. And by doing this 3 times, by doing this, I developed a really strong foundation. That's how I learned. That is what was very effective for me. I'm not telling you that you shouldn't do the same. You can code along if that is what makes you learn faster and makes you more productive. I felt that the writing part really helped me to remember the syntax, and always I can go back to my notes and refresh my knowledge. So that was a win-win situation for me, writing it down in paper. I did have 2 monitors, so I can basically code along, but I didn't take that way because I want to be a problem solver, a real programmer, not just someone who copies code. Okay, later I also made some digital notes to teach others about machine learning concepts and Python, and to really make them understand the logic behind all the program. So the digital note is actually even more concise and graphical version of the notebook that I had. It really helped me to again, I was teaching Python for 5 months, and it helped me also to always get this foundation strong. At the same time, it also helped the students to understand the projects better, especially due to online classes. They have to learn from several miles apart, and I can't really draw them in piece of paper and show them. So a digital note was really helpful for my students and for myself too. I used to get a lot of errors, especially when I was learning, when I was new to Python. That was kind of my learning process. I really learned how to debug code, and I think after I got a lot of errors only, I actually learned how to program. By the way, actually I also learned a lot of modules. As soon as I learned about modules, I started learning this module, NumPy, Pandas, all the top 10 modules and the important modules, because I feel like the modules and packages makes 90% of the Python, and modules is what makes Python really powerful. So I also used to spend a lot of time looking at open source code, open source programs in GitHub, and a lot of other places. This gave me the logic behind the code. I was able to understand the logic, and this made me a better problem solver in my life too. Python is just a tool to create things, and I think if you have this tool, I had so many imagination as a child to create this, that I want to make a car like this, but I was never able to implement it without the help of Python. That's why I think you should start learning Python even if you are in school. You can make some amazing projects, and you can have a portfolio for yourself. And this is one of the most important reason why I think everyone should learn to code. Yeah, so I also had the habit of coding the same program for more than once. I used to make the exact same project and exact same games more than once. I really learned to optimize the code, and coding more than once just makes you understand what you have did wrong in the previous code, in the previous game. So don't think that you always have to code something different. Try to code a simple game, a snake game or ping pong or any game again and again. By doing it, you will optimize the code, you will learn where you are going wrong, and it will definitely tell you how much you know about the program. When it comes to programming, doesn't really matter whether you code for 1,000 lines or you solve the problem in a single line, but the code must be robust and optimized, and by solving the same problem again and again, you basically make something optimized. Codes are like poems. By looking at the neatness of your code, a HR will be able to tell whether you are a programmer or you are someone useless for the company. So what I mean by poem is that it should have comments, it should be structured, it should look clean, it should have doc strings, everything to it. You can't simply write a code and expect others to understand your code. One more thing I have learned from my coding journey is that there are some rules that you have to follow to keep your code clean, and you should grow this habit really early on. So by following these rules, you get more mature in Python, you'll have your own style of solving the problem, but the structure will always be the same. By following this rule, you will ensure that your code is readable. Since Python is a readable language, it is expected that your program should be understandable by other programmers also. What did I do after learning Python? After I learned the fundamentals of Python, I started exploring the path that I can take, the branches of Python. I was always interested in self-driving cars, so I have learned modules like OpenCV, which is computer vision, machine learning. I also learned low-level controllers. ROS is something that I'm learning right now. Even though I started machine learning very early on, as soon as I completed Python, I felt like a genius after learning TensorFlow. It is something difficult. It's not exactly easy, to be honest. Many people say that it is so easy, so simple. At this point, I also had doubts. I didn't really understand what goes behind those black boxes of machine learning code, right? That's when I also joined a specialization in Coursera by deeplearning.ai, and that really gave me a lot of knowledge about how exactly these machine learning code work, like exactly what is a neuron, what is perceptron, how this backpropagation works, how this code get optimized as it learns. So these are some of the topics that I have learned. Many programmers, even YouTubers, a lot of people say that you don't really need all this maths knowledge to use TensorFlow to create machine learning programs. I totally understand, because it is easy without the maths. But learning the math behind every single line of code lets me know how exactly the code is going to behave, and it really gives me the insight to optimize a program, to optimize a code. That is what is important at the end, right? You don't want to create a machine learning program that sucks in identifying cancer patient. And this also gave me a lot of respect about the importance of maths. I never liked maths during my school, but after learning machine learning, I felt that maths is so important, and it is used in everywhere. And I fell in love with maths. This also developed a strong respect for the TensorFlow developers. I really thank them for making our life a lot easier without all the maths. I also applied for several internships, and I got selected, and I worked as a Python instructor for 5 months. Then my internship period got over, and I came back and started learning more about Python. I also started learning ROS. ROS stands for Robot Operating System, and I'm learning every day. I'm learning small pieces that makes up self-driving car. I was learning Python. Now I'm learning ROS. I also learned machine learning, computer vision, everything, to achieve my end goal. So setting up that end goal that I was talking before is really important. Another reason why you really want to learn technology, right? Why you want to learn Python is that you develop a very strong respect for all those engineers in Tesla and scientists who make our world a better place to live, who is making your life a lot easier. So I really got a very good I developed a very strong respect for people who work in these industries, and I think that is another reason why you really should at least learn something about programming, something about engineering in general. So we are coming to the conclusion, the end of the video. Something that I want to conclude with is I'm still learning. I'm not a master in Python. I think I will always be learning Python as long as it is going to be in existence. Yeah, of course I'll learn other programming language, but it doesn't mean that I'm leaving Python. So these are my thoughts and my journey from being a complete stranger to programming to becoming pretty fluent with coding. Hopefully this video was helpful to everyone who wants to learn programming as a beginner, who wants to start with Python or any programming language, to be honest. Hopefully this video will keep you motivated to learn. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more like these videos. I also make tutorials about Python or machine learning, etc. See you guys in the next video.